We're back on the Chris McPherson Show with another French Open Matches of the Day to Watch preview, and it is day 7. We're getting to the midpoint. Things are really heating up at Roland Garros, and of course, when it's time to talk tennis, the best man in the business for us to get on is Christian Monaghan from the First Serve. Christian, it's getting exciting over there in Paris.
G'day, Chris. Yeah, it's starting to get to the crunch time. Third and fourth rounds now coming up. It's going to be interesting to see who falls. We've seen a lot of seeds fall early as well. So yeah, a few more surprises to come, I think.
Yeah, there's certainly some patches of the draw in both the men's and the women's that are starting to open up, and a few surprises. We've seen overnight, everyone was sort of itching, and we were talking about it yesterday. Yelena Ostapenko versus Iga Swiatek, and Rebecca decided that she had other thoughts on that. So there's different things happening. Again, that's why we have these tournaments structured the way we do, because there's always a surprise, and we'll talk about some of those surprise packets. But let's talk Aussie Watch. It's how we've started this each episode we've done, and it's getting a little bit leaner on the ground, but we do still have one on each side of the men's and the women's draw, respectively. Daria Kasatkina is our lady rocking the Aussie flag, newly rocking the Aussie flag, and she's got a really challenging matchup this time around up against Paula Badosa from Spain.
Going to be very tough for Kasatkina. Paula Badosa, we know, being former world number 2. She's got the quality, but obviously in the past, year or so, she's been sort of crippled by injury. Been really difficult for her to get back on the tour, but it's great to see her stringing some few wins together. But she's coming into this with two back-to-back 3 centers, right? So I don't know, how is the body going to hold up? She made a deep run at the Australian Open. I believe it was a quarterfinal run there. So look, she is really getting back into the groove. But even Kasatkina before the French Open, she wasn't really in the best of form. Struggled to win back-to-back matches. I don't know if it was the pressure of switching nationalities to Australia, if that had anything to do with it, because before then she was still sort of one of those sort of top players in the top 16. I think she's 17th seed at the moment, dropping a bit down. But look, she has the quality to beat Badosa, no doubt. It's just, look, in these sort of occasions, I think Badosa has a bit more experience to get through, I guess, those pressure moments, especially if it goes deep in a third set, for example. Going to be fascinating, the matchup, in terms of the power, the balance of the match. I think, look, I'd probably lean towards Paula Badosa to get the job done, which would be bad news for the Aussies. But look, that's not to say Kasatkina doesn't have a chance, because it should be close for sure.
It's certainly going to be an interesting one. Clay, obviously, Badosa's favourite surface. I think she's got just shy with the wins she's had already this tournament of an 80% win record at Roland Garros, which is surprising when you consider that she's only ever made it to the quarterfinals once. But she usually makes it to sort of third, fourth round, quarterfinal. She's reasonably consistent there. So it's going to be a big scalp. As you said, it's interesting because neither of them come into this tournament in the best of form. There's been some clouds over both of them for a number of reasons. So really looking forward to seeing how this one shapes up. I think it's my heart speaking, not my head. But I'm going to lean to our Aussie on this one, but not with a lot of confidence.
Yeah, it's going to be, look, basically a flip of the coin, really. I mean, if both players get through, either one, it's no real surprise, right? To see them progress. It's a big opportunity, that's for sure, because you see Paula Badosa 10th seed, but like I said, she's really starting to work her way back on the tour. She's still a bit vulnerable, right? I think there are a couple of flaws in her game. She played Naomi Osaka in the first round, very tough there. Serving for the first set, couldn't capitalize. Osaka broke back and won the tiebreak. So, look, she does have these mental lapses in concentration sometimes, and perhaps Kasatkina can take advantage of that. But like in terms of the power hitting from the baseline, that's what I'm intrigued about, because this should be, in terms of a winner's aspect, if you're a tennis purist, this is going to be a good match to watch.
It certainly will be looking forward to that one. Another one that I'm looking forward to is watching one of the young stars of the tennis scene, Mira Andreeva. We've seen her rocketing up into contention in recent years. The last sort of 18 months or so, she's really just made a statement and been on the scene. And she comes up against Yulia Putintseva, the Kazakhstani, who's made her way through. She's been up to the top 20 earlier this year. She still sits in the seedings. Obviously, we know she was previously a Russian, as some of the other Kazakhstanis are, but she's someone that probably hasn't been the most consistent, hasn't always been known for, really deep runs at a lot of these Grand Slams. She's probably underperformed realistically, considering the rest of her career over the sort of last 10 or 12 years that she's been on the major tour.
Mm. Yeah, Putintseva reminds me of this fiery character, right? Very passionate on the court, provides a lot of energy when things don't go her way. She can provide a couple of tantrums, which should be good entertainment if Andreeva does happen to get the better of her, especially early on. Because look, Andreeva, this is a breakout tournament last year, right? She made the semi-finals, knocked out Sabalenka from a set down, which is unbelievable for her age back then, 17-year-old. So I mean, look, this is going to be. Look, don't want to say straightforward. Putintseva does have a couple of weapons, but I expect Andreeva to get through this. I'd be shocked if she doesn't, if she falls at this hurdle, because as you mentioned, Putintseva just hasn't sort of been at the races the past couple of seasons. A couple of injuries here and there, a couple of niggles. So, look, this is going to be, I think, a game of just mental strength. I think Putintseva, if she can get into Andreeva's head early on, start to really disrupt her, maybe make Andreeva come to the net a bit more where she's not as comfortable. Limit her, I guess, her winners. From the baseline, I think she will have, I guess, a slight chance. But look, for Andreeva, if she does lose this game, I think it'll be quite a shock.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this is one of those ones where you talk about players that want to, take to that next level and get into the top, 3 or 4 players in the world and be there consistently over time. If we look at the men's games, the players that are the Sinners and Alcaraz versus some of those other players, maybe the Runers and those sorts of guys, you've got to win those matches that you're very expected to win. And this is that point of her career for Mira Andreeva, despite her very, very, very youthful age.
Yeah, it is. For Andreeva, this is a statement, right? This, some of these games are banana skins, and this could be one of them with Putintseva. It just, again, like I said before, the mental side of it. Can she be mature enough? I mean, we saw in the second round in Andreeva's match that she went down a break. I think she was down 3-love at one stage, and she fought back. Ended up winning that game in straight sets. So, for her being still a teenager, still so much to learn. I guess, look, that's just going to be a big factor in this match, whether she can keep it together. And so far, throughout her young career, she's been able to do that, and she's managed that, pretty comfortably. So I expect no difference here, and probably another straight sets win for Andreeva coming up.
Well, let's move on to, I guess, a couple of those ones that we're talking about where the draws opened up, and these two have both opened up their own draw. When we have a look at Hailey Baptiste versus Jessica Buzas Monero, both of these had wins over seeds in the first round. For Baptiste, the American, she knocked out Beatrice Haddad-Maia. Buzas Monero absolutely dominated Emma Navarro.
Yeah, the win against Haddad-Maia for Baptiste was a bit more of a shock. Less of a shock than it was for Buzas Maia, because that was like, what was going on there? 6-love, 6-1. I mean, I thought, did Navarro go down with an injury, or was she hurt? Because to win one game, Navarro, she's been in great form over the past 12 or so months. Getting into the top 10, really producing really consistent tennis at Grand Slam level. To see that result really surprised me. So like you said, this has really opened up a great opportunity for both of these women to make the fourth round. Hailey Baptiste, another American. I think I mentioned last episode with you, Chris, how these Americans, especially the young ones, are really starting to come to their own on clay, which hasn't been their particular favorite surface. We know the hard course, they do tend to dominate a bit more with their home slam as well. So yeah, for Baptiste, I mean, coming through, I guess, sort of the WTA Challenger circuit, if you want, over the past, few seasons, to come into her own now, into Grand Slam level, a chance for a fourth round. It doesn't get much bigger for her. So, yeah, I guess from a Spanish perspective, Buzas Monero, again, another chance. She's placed a lot of her tennis on the clay, on the lower tier events, throughout her career previously. So it's going to be a tough battle. Probably Baptiste to get through for mine. I'm not too sure about you, Chris, but probably just based on that experience. I know Baptiste has played a few top quality plays in the past. That might get her over the line here.
Yeah, look, I think she's one that's just been waiting for that breakthrough opportunity. I mean, Buzas Monero, she's certainly made it a bit deeper at some Grand Slams in recent memory. She made the third, I think, at Wimbledon and the US Open last year, but this feels like, part of that wave of Americans that are starting to push through, as you said. And so, yeah, I'm leaning towards Baptiste. It's really exciting, though, starting to see some of these, I guess, new names in inverted commas. Neither of these are, in the Mira Andreeva age bracket. They're both in their early 20s, but it's great to see some new names starting to pop up and make their way through. And one of these will have an opportunity to head into the last 16, which is really exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing how this match plays out as we go tonight, Australian time. It's going to be interesting. Speaking of Americans, Christian, obviously their biggest and brightest hope is Coco Gauff, and she has an interesting match, I'd probably pitch it as, up against Marie Buskova in this third round.
Yeah, I mean, for Coco, obviously knocked off one of her own Aussies in Olivia Gadecki in the last round. Looked pretty flawless, to be honest. On serve, pretty dominant. Both wings, backhand, forehand. She can do no wrong, really, at the moment. So she's a real threat and a contender going deep again at the French Open, which is, again, no surprise, considering the other half of the draw is pretty stacked, with the likes of Swiatek and Rybakina. And Sabalenka. So yeah, I think for her it's a great opportunity to make the final. In this match here against Buskova, again, Buskova reminds me of an inconsistent player. Like she can turn it on when she wants to, and she does. I guess not necessarily the weapons, but she has the craft. That's what springs to mind when I think of a player like Buskova can really, trouble her opponents with, the slice, for example, making her opponents come to the net. So she can be an unpredictable force, but Coco with her, I guess, her nous and her experience at these sort of levels, Grand Slam level, it's going to be, again, another shock if she loses this match, because, again, I expect her to probably reach the final, all things considered. So, yeah, it should be interesting. Probably won't expect a three-setter here, unfortunately, for the neutrals if they're expecting, a 2 or 3 hour contest. But, yeah, expecting Coco to get through here.
Interestingly, I know that sometimes you're drawing a long bow when you look at previous records and stuff, and we talked about that when we were shaping up towards Ostapenko and Swiatek and some of these. But Buskova does have a 2-0 record. Admittedly, those matches in 2022 and 2023. I think the stat that I'd rather lean to here, Coco got 13-3 on clay this year. She's really taken her clay game to another level, and as you say, I think she should get this done, despite the fact that both had reasonably light work in their first two matches. I think Coco will just be far too strong, and it'll be a straight set win for the American superstar here and get her through to the last 16, and she'll continue on her way and face up for that fourth round, which we expect. Let's turn to the men's, mates, and someone that gets me very excited. This match gets me really excited, and we were talking about it before we recorded. The Brazilian star. We remember, the love affair the Brazilians had with clay when Guga Curtin came through. Gustavo, he was an absolute superstar at Roland Garros there in the early 2000s. João Fonseca takes on Jack Draper. The English, a bit like the Aussies, not known for their clay prowess, but as we'll talk about soon, they've got 3 players in the last 32 in this half of the draw.
This is going to be a really mouthwatering contest. They've learned from their lesson now. They've got on court Suzanne Lenglen, not on the outside courts, which is going to be good because it allows obviously more fans to pack the stands. And we've seen on like social media, for example, like over the past few days, there's so many Brazilians flocking there, to watch. Obviously, Fonseca is the big standout, and he just attracts so much fans, not only Brazilians but just tennis fans in general. He's just so exciting to watch. He's got that explosive game, and for such a young talent, I mean, he's got such a bright future ahead of him. But I mean, I think you were saying, Chris, that you were sort of leaning towards Fonseca in this one slightly. Probably have to lean the other way. I think Draper, with the clay court season he's had at the moment, obviously reaching the Madrid final, fell short against Casper. But I thought that was a tournament that said to me, okay, look, he's had a few injury troubles in the past. Sometimes he's had to retire through tournaments because the body just hasn't been able to hold up. But I think from the early signs I've seen in this campaign at the French, I think Draper, for me, can probably just squeeze past the line against Fonseca. But in saying that, honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised this is a 5-setter, because there's going to be so many, ups and downs from both players, from both sides of the net. So, yeah, this is going to be one on the bucket list for sure, depending to watch on TV tonight.
Yeah, this one's going to be huge, as you say. It's a really interesting matchup. Draper just coming back from that 4-set win in the last round against Gael Monfils, which would have been interesting, and it probably would have set him really well for a fairly hostile environment, which you have to think this will be, despite the fact that the UK is a lot closer than Brazil is to France. The clay is, as you said, it draws in the Brazilian fans. We talked about that before. And again, these guys did play earlier in the year, admittedly on the hard courts, which suits Draper so much better at Indian Wells, and he absolutely wiped the court with Fonseca in that love and four. So a lot of things point to Draper. There's just something about this run of Fonseca, and mate, I'm a sucker for a fairy tale young 18-year-old star making his way through. Look, I think Fonseca is going to become a force, a bit like Draper has in recent times over time. It's hard to believe there's only 5 years between these guys. It feels like Jack Draper's been on tour forever, and Fonseca's the latest. I guess the latest name to pop up on the radar. So, as you say, absolutely worth tuning into tonight. Can't wait for this one. It's probably my pick of the matches in terms of how I think the atmosphere, the excitement, all these other things is going to be. Longland's just been rocking in recent days, so can't wait to see how that goes tonight. Aussie time, it's going to be an enthralling clash. Some other good clashes to look at in this one. I have a feeling that the crowd's not going to be in Sasha Zverev's corner against Francisco Caboli.
Yeah, I think, well, Flavio Cavoli, the
Sorry, Flavio
Italian.
Caboli. Yeah, thank you.
Hey, don't get the Italian names wrong, Chris. Don't make me upset. But no, I think honestly, I reckon this could be a bit of an upset. I think Kaboli might be able to do it because Zverev, I think I've mentioned in the past, his clay court season, just his 2025 in general post AO, just has been somewhat disastrous. I mean, he won that title in Munich a few weeks back, which again was a weaker field, so I'm not going to take too much into that. But there's just been some losses in there this season where you just don't expect from Zverev. Had a chance to get the number one ranking off Sinner and couldn't capitalize. I think Kaboli, he's just one of those players who he's going to play with no fear, right? He's just going to take it to Zverev, try and hit balls back, try and defend from the back of the court, try and make Zverev miss. And Zverev is the type of character over the past few months who, if things don't go his way, he's going to get very frustrated. And I just think he's in that mindset at the moment of he can doubt himself. And when he's in that zone, that's the dangerous side of Zverev in a bad way because that's when he sort of second guesses himself. He tries to play it a bit more safe. Zverev is very lethal when he goes for his shots, right? When he's more comfortable, when he steps into the baseline. So Kaboli, I think for that reason, could potentially cause a bit of an upset. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes through here.
Yeah, I like how Caboli's shaped up. A win over Marin Cilic, who we know is probably a shadow of the Marin Cilic he formerly was. Then beating countryman Matteo Alnaldi in 4 sets, and he put the foot on the accelerator in the fourth set in the second round. And I think, too, the opportunity that presents, and again, we'll talk about this off air, the winner of this match will take on the winner of Talon Greek Sport and Ethan Quinn. So realistically, whoever wins this match will go into that match as favourite. So for Caboli, and again, we know the Italian crowd gets behind the guys, and we'll talk about Yannick Sinner in a minute. I think this is a huge opportunity. He's probably not going to get a better opportunity at this point in his career to push through into the fourth round and maybe even the quarterfinals of a Grand Slam.
Yeah, for sure. That's it. And that's why I'm saying he's going to go playing with no fear. He knows that there's such a massive chance on the line. He's not expected to beat Zverev, obviously. The German comes in as a big favourite. So that plays into Kaboli's favour as well. So, I mean, look, I think the amount of tennis Caboli has played with sort of the lower tier events, and obviously he's been able to gain entry in ATP 500s in a couple of those tournaments. I think, look, he's got a big chance here against Zverev. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he takes in 4 or 5 sets because Zverev, his form recently just it's not convincing.
No, it's certainly not. And again, even that title he won, as you said, he did it against a lower class field. I know he wasn't 100% when he won that, and he made that very clear to everyone about the fact. I think the comment was, there's only one other player on tour, I think referencing Novak, that would have turned out for this game. And look, he doesn't do a lot to endear himself with the fans either, so it's going to be pretty hostile, as I said, in terms of this matchup. Next up, mate, this one, I think it's pretty straightforward, but I like the story. Yuri Lehechka, he's just always there and thereabouts. He keeps on turning up, but huge effort to take on Yannick Sinner. The winner of this will take on Andre Rublev after the walkover. Really disappointing for the French fans that Arthur Fils, that back injury that he, disrupted his last round win, has seen him have to withdraw from the tournament. So a bit of a walkthrough for Rublev, but it's going to be tough, and you'd think he'll be up against Sinner next.
Yeah, firstly, unfortunate for Fierce because he was sort of one of the stories of the tournament. That comeback, not comeback, against Jamie Munoz in the fifth set, obviously down a break, and then came back 4-all, love 40, and then obviously had a bit of a back complaint, I believe, and then that's obviously the reason why he's been able to pull out, unfortunately. So, wishing him a speedy recovery. But in terms of this match for Sinner Lehechka, look, Lehechka can pull tricks out of the bag. There's no doubt about it. It's just whether he can keep it consistent throughout. And for Sinner, I mean, he's just such a master at disrupting opponents' games, not giving him any room to breathe whatsoever. He did that against Gasquet in the last match on Richard Gasquet's farewell, which is great to see in that ceremony post-match as well, by the way. So, look, expecting a routine win again for Sinner, I think he's really building himself into some form, and that's the danger, isn't it, for any of the opposition, for Alcaraz, for example, looking at someone like Sinner, who's playing himself into this really good form. He's had a couple of hiccups. Sinner, I think he lost this, didn't lose a set, but he was down, I believe, 4-love in that third set to Frenchman Rinderknech. So, look, I think he's put that to one side. Sinner can really regroup now, look forward to these latter stages. But Leheshka can't underestimate him because he's one of those players who can really, yeah, pull out of the bag in terms of the firepower he possesses. I think he made a Australian Open quarterfinal run a couple seasons back as well. So not like he can't do it, but against Sinner, it's a different proposition altogether. So yeah, fully expecting the Italian to get the job done.
Yeah, I think Sinner, we saw how aggressive he was in that second round match. And look, I think 48 winners potentially in that match was the number. He was just going all out. He had won 85% of his first serve points. He's warming back into his return, I guess. And that's a dangerous situation. As you said, Lehechka can, I wouldn't put it past him to take a set here and disrupt things a little bit, but I just think Sinner's, composure and class will be far too much for him. The last one before we wrap up for the day is it's probably a little bit of a left field one, but we talked about the Brits before. Again, not known for their clay court prowess, but we see Norrie versus Fernley for a spot in the last 16.
Yeah, Jacob Fernley is an interesting one. Obviously, he's had a bit more of a rest than his counterpart Norrie with the retirement of Ugo and Bear midway through the second set in the second round. So potentially he's sitting on a bit more energy compared to Norrie, but I actually got to catch a glimpse of Norrie's match against Popperin at last week in Geneva, and Popperin was up, I believe, 5-3 in the first set. Looked as though he was going to win the first set comfortably, and then Norrie just out of nowhere just played just unbelievable tennis. Some of his shots just did not miss. I believe second set didn't even make an unforced error against Popper, and I think that was close to a record on the ATP Tour. So when he's locked in, Norrie, he can cause a lot of trouble, and then backed up with his experience as well against a youngster like Fernley, who's still trying to plant his feet on the tour and these sort of Grand Slam matches. I probably favour towards Norrie in this sort of British clash. But look, Fernley, he's got a lot of skill, up his sleeve, and he can really produce some really flair and some nice shots. But look, I'm expecting Norrie because he's just so, I guess, in terms of defensive from the back of the court, he can do no wrong. So, over the course of a best of 5 set, I'm expecting Norrie to make the least amount of mistakes, and that's why I've got him progressing to the fourth round.
It's an interesting one because I think if you looked at the draw off scratch at the start of the tournament, you probably didn't see either of these guys getting past the first round. Fernley, admittedly younger, but coming up against the agricultural clay court game of Stan Wawrinka. Again, the Brits not known for their clay court game, and then Norrie, we saw that enthralling 5-set match against Daniil Medvedev, a player who, when it's getting down to the trenches, very rarely gets beaten. Daniil, so they've both done really well to get to this point. But yeah, as you say, Fernley now. I think he's ranked just outside the top 50, and that's about the peak of his career thus far. Whereas Norrie, we know he's been a lot higher. I think as high as the top 8 at one point a couple of years ago. Obviously, he's had a bit of a bumpy run since then, but you just have to think that, as you said, he's going to be a little bit too classy. We know he's made a Wimbledon semi-final before, but has never made it to the fourth round here at the French. He's made it to the third round a few times. So I think this is the time for him to make that next step and match his, best performances. That'll mean he's made it to the last 16 of every single one of the Grand Slams, which is probably fairly representative of his career.
Yeah, for sure. And he's made a Masters final as well. I think at Indian Wells just after the COVID period. So he does know how to get it done in these big tournaments. That game against Medvedev, I was able to watch that fifth set. That was just crazy. Roller coaster. Medvedev sort of collapsing a bit, and Norrie, he's a player who can take advantage of that, right? He senses the moment on the other side of the net when things aren't going right. And I don't know, potentially for Fernley, I haven't watched too much of him, but if he doesn't have a cool head, then Norrie's just gonna pounce on that. So that's what Fernley has to really keep an eye on.
From memory, that Masters final in was it Bassisvili that he played? It was one of the more
Nicolas Bassisvili, one of the
matchups.
weird ones. Yeah, that was a weird one. So unorthodox.
Well, Christian, we know there's been lots of other talking points, lots of other controversy, and I'm sure there's more and more dropping. There's a few talking points that we'll leave to you and the team at the first serve. But if people want to dig into some of that sort of stuff, some of the scheduling, some of the other matters that have gone on, there's been a few press conferences in the last sort of 24 to 48 hours that have raised some eyebrows. You guys will be unpacking those on the First Serve's website, and it's a place to really go in depth. We're just scratching the surface here.
Appreciate it, Chris. That's right. We'll definitely be back for some more tennis talk over the next 7 days or so. It'll be interesting to see who goes through seeds. I'm expecting more seeds to fall as well. So yeah, I can't wait for it. Looking forward to it.
Exactly right. Stay tuned here. We'll keep you up to date each day. Stay tuned to the First Serve as well. Keep watching Roland Garros. It's getting exciting. It's heating right up. But thank you again for tuning in. Thank you, Christian Monaghan.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.